Hey everybody, this is Mr. Mom coming at you with another APUSH video. Today we're taking a look at topic 6.10, focusing in on the development of the middle class. And we're taking a look at, really the Gilded Age, the late 1800s. And one of the things that is going to be defining this period as we get to the end of the 19th century and into the beginning of the 20th century is that we're starting to see, really for the first time in America's history, at least in a way that we can kind of start to recognize it, is the growth of some sort of a middle class. And, what we mean by this is that, traditionally Americans were a rural farming society. But as we start to get into the late 1800s through the Industrial Revolution, we are starting to see more Americans moving to urban areas, moving into the world of factories. But we're also seeing a number of Americans moving to cities and getting involved in what we call white-collar jobs, as opposed to blue-collar laboring jobs. White-collar jobs are, jobs that require more specialized education. These are jobs that don't require, your muscles and, put calluses on your hands to do that kind of a job. So, you're talking about people that are going to start to define the new modern America in the Gilded Age of the, the end of the 19th and into the early 20th century. For example, if you have these factories that are going to be popping up and churning out all sorts of manufactured goods, you got to have managers to, run the daily operations of these plants. You got to have folks that are going to be responsible for hiring and training. You have to have, people that are accountants dealing with the money. You got to have clerks and secretaries to be able to do, those necessary administrative assistant roles in a factory. You need scientists to help innovate and create research and development. And, you need advertisers to take that product that you are producing and try to sell it on the open market. So, as we start to become more industrialized, there's a whole new world of white-collar, non-labor per se jobs that are going to start to emerge. And, some of these jobs are going to require limited formal education. Others are going to require a lot more formal education. And as we'll talk later, this is going to go obviously, hand in hand with a growth in the amount of people getting formal education, not just secondary education like high school education, but also post-secondary education, talking about college. Now, something that we've talked about previously in this unit, focusing in on the Industrial Revolution, is the growth and power of some of these what would be called titans of industry during the Industrial Revolution. Folks like, Rockefeller and Vanderbilt and J.P. Morgan and others that were able to amass these vast fortunes in their respective industries, generally done by, using, fairly ruthless business tactics, though generally legal at the time, to create these monopolies that put them in this, plutocratic level on the socioeconomic ladder that just really didn't exist in the past. I mean, we've obviously had wealthy folks. We never had this uber wealthy class of society that was now beginning to emerge. Now, with this, ability to amass these gargantuan fortunes, does there come some responsibility with regards to, how to use that wealth? Now, as we studied before, there are going to be some that would argue from more of a social Darwinist perspective that, there really is no sense of responsibility to help others with that wealth, for example, that you've earned it, you spend it however you want. If you want to spend it on yachts and champagne and, trips around the globe and, whatnot, that's your right to do so, and you shouldn't feel any guilt about it. But there are going to be others, such as, for example, Andrew Carnegie, pictured here, who we know is going to be the king of steel during the Industrial Revolution, that will posit that, well, in reality, those that are talented enough to have been able to amass this fortune do have some sort of a responsibility to take that wealth and help society at large with that fortune. And this idea that he is going to be promoting, and others that will support it, will be this will be known as the gospel of wealth. And what the gospel of wealth was talking about, what the gospel of wealth was talking about was the idea that if you have tremendous wealth, you not only have the right, but really a moral responsibility to engage in philanthropic efforts to help the community, to help society at large. And this is going to come in many forms. This could be, for example, in the form of, building universities. For example, Cornelius Vanderbilt and William Vanderbilt will start Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. You're going to see John Rockefeller start the University of Chicago. Duke University and Stanford Universities were both started by industrial tycoons of this time period. You saw folks that are going to be, promoting, for example, libraries. And Andrew Carnegie especially was someone that certainly, had the idea that libraries really are the key to helping those that are coming from humble origins to be able to have the skills available to be able to rise above their origins. Carnegie himself kind of speaks, from his own experience with regards to this, because Carnegie was a very, very poor kid growing up in Scotland before coming to the United States. He had to drop out of school at an early age. He had to work in a cigar factory to help his family. And so he knows, what it's like to grow up without. And so the idea being is that if you can provide that access, to, an education through libraries, which, are free to the public, all of the knowledge that society might have available free to the public, that's really going to liberate some people and provide opportunity that just simply wouldn't exist otherwise. And with regards to libraries, Carnegie will build literally hundreds of libraries across the United States during this time period. And, some right here in Ohio, as you can see pictured in this image right here, the closest Carnegie library that will be built in 1903 in Lebanon, Ohio, just up the road. I'm sure most of you have driven past this structure right here in the middle of downtown Lebanon, right across the street from the famous Golden Lamb. Some of you have checked books out of there. That is one of many Carnegie libraries that were built across the United States. Additionally, though, when we do talk about the gospel of wealth, Carnegie is really talking about the idea that this is a must. It's a necessity for those that are wealthy. In the work known as the Gospel of Wealth, Carnegie writes that the man who dies leaving behind many millions of available wealth, which was his to administer during life, will pass away unwept, unhonored, and unsung. Of such as these, the public verdict will then be, the man who dies rich, thus rich, dies disgraced. In other words, if you do not use that wealth to help others, then you are going to be viewed historically. Your legacy will be pretty poor moving forward. Now, when we say, the gospel of wealth, do not take the gospel of wealth to mean handing out cash to people in need. For example, Carnegie did not believe in what we would consider to be, welfare today, handing out cash or handing out food and stuff like that necessarily. Carnegie believed that doing things like that was actually bad for society. And this kind of gets to an interesting aspect of the rationale regarding the gospel of wealth. As far as Carnegie is concerned, the gospel of wealth centers around the idea that there's a reason why some people like himself were able to amass these vast fortunes. And this does kind of tie into social Darwinism a little bit with the idea that they were able to be successful, super wealthy, not by chance and not by luck, but because of inherent talent and ability. And with that inherent talent and ability to amass a fortune for themselves personally, the gospel of wealth is then going to state that those that have the talent to acquire vast wealth for themselves know what is best for the society at large. So in other words, when you're talking about being philanthropic, it's the idea that you as that wealthy person know inherently what is best for those in need, and then you provide what they need. Now, note, when you look at this, on some level, this is a really positive thing. Instead of the rich kind of hoarding their wealth or engaging in conspicuous consumption for their own, personal glory, they are helping those in need. But some have argued that, this idea of the gospel of wealth is a bit paternalistic, because when you have the attitude like Carnegie had, that, well, because I am rich, I am smart enough, I'm talented enough, I know what's best for society, and I'm going to spend that money to help you the way I see fit, well, that is a bit condescending to those people that are in need. The argument being, well, who do you think you are, to tell me what I need? We're all equal human beings, we all are entitled to the same rights. Who are you to tell me, what I need? So this does breed a little bit of resentment, according to critics of the gospel of wealth. But note, the gospel of wealth will be significant for, many wealthy people to be able to kind of leave their mark in a positive way, other than just amassing these vast fortunes. Now, moving away from the gospel of wealth, let's take a look at another important change that's taking place in America as we get to the end of the 19th century, and that's the amount of women working outside the home. We know that women traditionally, are going to be viewed as having the responsibility to be, having a domestic role for the family, raising of children, cooking of meals, doing laundry, and granted, to some degree, this is, kind of heralded socially, with the idea of, the cult of domesticity, if you will. But due to changes in the economy and low wages, in terms of the reality of it, we're going to see more and more women working outside the home. By the dawn of the 20th century, as you can see here, 1 in 5 women are going to be working outside the home. And note, this is not really an example of feminism. It's not really an idea of, look at me, I'm a woman, I'm becoming independent, I'm earning my own money. It's really out of a sense of financial need for their families. When you look at women working outside the home, it's the vast majority of the time it's single women helping out their parents. Now, there will be a small minority where, yes, it will be out of a sense of, I'm going to be a little bit more independent, but it's really mostly helping out their parents. And that's noticeable because only about 5% of married women are going to be working outside the home. So if you were married, you still overwhelmingly were going to be expected to kind of maintain that traditional domestic role in your family, whereas if you were a single adult woman or even a teenage adult woman, you're going to have more of a responsibility to kind of help the family out financially. And if we are going to start to see more women working outside the home now, what are these jobs going to be entailing? Well, as we said, some of these are going to be more white-collar jobs, for example, in clerical work in these new corporations. But also, though, jobs that do require, additional formal education, like nursing and teaching. And so when we talk about women that are starting to become urban professionals, I want you to really think about nursing and teaching. These are going to be very, very common jobs for women in white-collar America at the turn of the 20th century that does require more than a high school education. And note, this is going to be significant because as those jobs become more popular, there's going to be more of an increase in the number of women attending college, getting bachelor's degrees, etc., etc. Now, you might also kind of be wondering, well, why these specific fields as opposed to maybe others? Well, unfortunately, a lot of it also is tied to stereotypes traditionally associated with women. We still are seeing women being kind of, boxed in terms of being described as the fair gender, the more compassionate gender, the more, sensitive, gender, and that when you talk about teaching young children and helping people that are sick and ill, that women are more predisposed to do that stereotypically than men. So unfortunately, there are going to be more opportunities, but pretty limited though. All right, we'll stop it for here. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.